we believe we get all the blessings. So it's going to be hard to be in the center, because this is what it means. Well, we want you to come. Those of us in the middle of this, we're going to raise children. We're going to care for the people. We're going to raise worship. We're going to be committed to it. It's not just 6 of us, it's 20 families or something. And whatever that piece is, all of a sudden you start realizing that begins to create the vibrancy that is the center of the church. And that could be a very different model. It doesn't matter necessarily about space or place or whatnot. There wasn't a lot of talk about, we got to build a building, we got to get a property. I mean, the one piece I heard you say that I really appreciate was it's hard to set up all the time. It's really hard. And one of the parts to wrestle with that is that I think that gives you one of those moments to think through, well, if that's somebody's ministry, then we don't want to take it away from them. But if it's not, we got to pray for God to give us another option. But there's this place to keep asking, what is the center of our ministry? What do we care about? What are these things that we do? And I do think part of this is this theme about commitment, because that's where your energy was a lot of the time. See, I think the story of VBS and the story of the Clubhouse and the story of the men's Bible study, right off the top, was a story about these amazed that these people are committed. like that story has got to be, that's what we want to be about. So here's where you guys get to go from here. Part of what you do is, I don't know if I caught them, but I think there's something, I'm going to add this notion of commitment, because I do think there's something about committed. And I talked about it as committed friends. You can do whatever you want with it. But I want to put the commitment in the notion of relationship. When you talk about going for shared images, the story of Gordon Cosby is an image. The story of the posse is an image. The story of this is what church ministry is an image, right? So these images, what I want you guys to think about is your own shared images. So how do you create shared images for a preferred future before you get to these innovative ways to create? And this last part of this is that all steps are collaborative. So as you think about this, one of the parts I want you to think about is how could you take, and there's this, Steve's got this book and it's got a whole way of doing it, and if you want to, I'll be glad to talk with you more about how you would take this, frame up some themes and see how can we get other people involved in this conversation. Because I do think you have this piece, for you guys, it's not built on numbers. It's built on who shows up. And you could do some events where you call people in and say, look, we want to get people to collaborate with us on our shared future and what this looks like. And you could end up with more people having these conversations that could build. What does it look like to build kind of a future around that answers these pieces? Does that make sense? So the next steps are to take these and think about how to take it to, my suggestion is to think about how to take it to more people in the life of the church. How to have this conversation. You can also do exactly the same way we just did it. But how to have this conversation with other people in the life of the church. What they did in the book was they took these themes and then they framed up a new set of questions around these themes. And to those questions, with other people.
But in some sense, just process-wise, thinking about this, you almost want to create the environment where we're able to go back and listen and hear in the larger story before we distill down and say. So, and even in the larger story, we don't want to necessarily say, yeah, that's where we got there too, and we got there too, we got there. But really look to say, okay, because these might be, I mean, I think this is close for us, but it could be broader. It could even have a slightly different take on it as we go to a larger, you're getting input from both people that have been around for a long time and new people. What is it that excited them? That could refine the ultimate, where exactly we end up. Because I look at that and think, yeah, all those are energizing for us here in this room.
Well, so one of the things you could do is if you think it's worthwhile, do the exact same thing we just did with a bigger group of people in your church. Invite them to come on you didn't even have to do the background stuff. I gave you all of the behind the scenes. You could do an evening where you basically did the 3 questions in an interview format. It takes you 45 minutes. You tease out and you just keep basically debrief one set of questions, let people talk about it, tell stories, debrief the second set, keep making the connections, ask the question, okay, so what are these themes that we want that are central to who we are? Where's the energy? What's the piece we're doing? What are we excited about? And then you basically say, we'd like to gather people together who want us to move to steps 4 and 5.
Potluck would be good. Get them in with the food.
Because partly what'll happen is you'll have, I'm sure you'll land on some of these same things, but what you'll do is you'll get another way of talking about the economic viability. You'll also get a chance to test some stuff. If you find that really a whole bunch of the folks in the church are saying children, 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 well, that's probably where we're going to need to put stuff, right? But what you want to be careful of is people say children, 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 so it should be fill in the blank like that best practice down the street. Right? Because that's where we go. We default back to the stuff that we know. Okay? My old church, what was really great was, and what you're trying to do is say, well, no, we're trying to discover ours, and there is a way of doing it that is so much different than ours, that if we can keep teasing that part out and doing it, it would be great. So that's exactly like, I think, the whole reason my approach to this with you guys was, if this feels helpful and that you're discovering some stuff in it, I suggest that you take it to the next step to the people in the church. And part of one of the pieces is, what we really want to do is identify, I think you just hit a piece great, it could be really interesting. What we really want to do, here's a shared image, here's an innovative way to create the future. What we want to do is try to establish and try to identify, can we identify 20 people, 20 families in our church who would be willing to invest themselves in the mission of this as much as we are? Not how big can we make this, not ask the question, how do we grow?
Right, because we're not going to get there. We're not going to get there in sufficient time, so we have to figure out another way to do it.
Yeah. So if we say, instead of saying, what can we do to attract people, we're going to say, what can we do to see if we can get to 20 families, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Dennis is 6, 14 more families. And what's it mean for us to get to? Can we identify and pray for 20 families who will be as committed to this as we are? And what I want you to think about is not selling, but discovering. Who's already out there, who are going to have the same language as you, who are, I think you're a great example of this, Christine. Here you are, just walked in there, came in and you came into MOPS, and all of a sudden here you are. It's a privilege to serve. I want to be part of more investment. Who are the folks out there? And if you can, and partly discovering that and paying attention to that, paying attention into that strength, into that passion, and believing that could be basically not only the way you solve the economic piece, but the way that economic piece focuses your mission of who you are as a church. This is our strength, this is who we are. The core of our church are these deeply committed people who serve and build relationships out of a sense of calling, who are open to being constantly amazed by God, who have a clear purpose related to our context, who are committed friends, who want to inspire other people. All of a sudden you have a vision statement. It comes out of who you are. I don't want to miss this piece about inspiring.
Well, I think we already have a few of those families that just couldn't make it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. God's already at work. That's your point. God's already working your midst.
So you don't think you had as many as we think?
As you think, right? All of a sudden it's like, wait a second.
We've got the Alloways and we've got the Smithers.
Yeah.
Why don't we take a couple minutes? What we'll do is I'll suggest is we'll take like a minute of silence. It's not going to be very silent, but isn't that the way the world is? Isn't that the way the world is? We'll take a couple of moments of silence, have you just reflect, and let me lead you through a couple of thoughts of prayer, and then we'll just pray. And we'll take 5 or 7 minutes.